Have you ever wondered why you feel exhausted without knowing why? Why even the moments that are supposed to feel warm, a hug, a glance, a date still don't quite reach you? There are days when you still smile, still work, still reply to messages on time, but beneath that calm surface is a slightly off heartbeat, a shallow breath you don't notice, a strange sense that you're living from outside your body, as if you're standing on the edge of your life, watching everything without truly touching anything. That's not just a habit of overthinking. That's when the shadow starts to speak. The shadow doesn't stay still. It shows up in how your body tenses during a harmless conversation, how you stay guarded even when loved, how your mind keeps running because your body no longer feels like a place you inhabit. And this very shadow stands between you and real love, not because you're unworthy of love, but because you've grown used to loving with your thoughts instead of with your presence. In this video, we'll go through 10 signs and turning points to break out of that loop of thought and rediscover the ability to love through real presence, especially the final step where the body returns and life begins to open again. 1. Modern humans live too much in their heads and too little in their bodies. There are days when you go about everything as usual, eating, showering, working, moving between packed schedules. Everything seems like you're managing life just fine, but deep down, it feels like you're standing on the sidelines of your own life, watching it go by like a movie with no role for you to step into. Sometimes, you're sitting in front of a full meal but have no idea what you just put in your mouth. You're showering, but your mind is chasing deadlines. You're out having fun, but thinking about what to post, as if a moment only matters when it's been proven to others. A day flies by, you get everything done, and by the end of it, all that's left is a vague emptiness with no name. We rarely notice it, but that feeling isn't random. It's a sign you've been out of your body for a long time. You're still functioning, but not from a place of life, just from thought. When you live too much in your head, your body becomes a forgotten place, like a big house where you only ever use the attic. You look down at everything, from above you control, you observe, but you no longer go down to the living room, no longer feel the floor beneath your feet, no longer open the windows to take in the real world. Over time, the house feels unfamiliar, and even you become a stranger in your own life. In moments like that, Carl Jung's words ring like a wake-up call. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When you're not in your body, the unconscious takes the wheel. You think you're choosing, but really, you're just reacting along old tracks, old fears, old memories, old wounds never looked at. Thought is where you hide, not where you live. Jung saw this as a survival mechanism. When people have to be strong too early, they learn to pull energy away from the body, the place that holds emotion, sensation, and unhealed pain. They live in their heads to avoid feeling, but the cost is disconnection from themselves. And when you can't connect with yourself, you can't truly connect with anyone else. Real love can't enter a body with no one home, a nervous system stuck in alert mode. So where's the way out? It's not about forcing yourself to think less or pushing yourself to feel more. It starts with coming back to the smallest things. Knowing what you're eating, feeling water touch your skin in the shower, noticing your breath rise and fall, feeling your heartbeat slow when you sit still. Those small things are how you step down from the attic of your inner house, how you return to the living room, open the window, and experience life where it really happens, in the body. Jung went through this himself. During the biggest psychological crisis of his life, he didn't turn to knowledge to save him. He returned to his hands, to the earth, to his breath. He built a tower in Bollingen, touched stone, walked every morning, letting the body lead the way to answers the soul needed. Jung didn't think his way out, he lived his way out. And maybe that's true for you too. You don't need to change your whole life. You just need to start with this question: where have I actually been today? If you haven't been present in your body, then no one can truly reach you, not even the one you want to love or the one who wants to love you. True love isn't found in loops of thought, but in a body that feels safe, present, and ready to experience. And the path out of overthinking isn't climbing another floor in the Tower of Reason, but stepping down slowly, gently back to where life has been waiting all along, right here in your own body. 2. Overthinking can be a sign of being disconnected from your body, not just a bad habit. There are moments when you think you're living normally, but in truth, you're just physically present. You sit there, listening to someone, nod at the right times, smile in the right places, but inside, you feel completely empty. You know you're sad, but you can't quite feel the sadness. You see others hugging and crying, while you just stand still, as if your emotions have been switched off. Everything happens around you, but you feel like a shadow witnessing, not really participating. This isn't weakness, it's not apathy, and it's definitely not a bad personality. It's a form of dissociation, a term from psychology. But let's put it into everyday language. Your mind is working, but your body is no longer a place you trust to feel. When emotions become dangerous or too overwhelming, whether in the past or the present, the mind automatically finds the safest way out. It takes you up into your head. The brain doesn't prioritize fully living. The brain prioritizes survival. And sometimes, surviving means not feeling too much. Emotions can bring pain, and pain threatens stability. So the brain chooses to separate you from your body, the place where emotions really live, and pushes you into a state of thinking, analyzing, observing. You're no longer living in the experience, you live around it. Here, Carl Jung's words shine a light on what you're going through. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. There's no universal formula for how humans cope with pain. Overthinking isn't a flaw. It's the shoe your past made you wear so you could keep walking. But at some point, that shoe starts to pinch. It makes you tired. It separates you from yourself and from the people trying to love you. One of the most striking examples of this is mathematician John Nash, the Nobel Prize winner known from A Beautiful Mind. Nash was incredibly intelligent and analytically sharp, but because his brain worked so intensely, he often disconnected from other people's emotions and from real-life experience. He could read the complex structure of equations, but couldn't read his own feelings. He once admitted there were periods when he felt nothing, as if his mind and body were living two separate lives. That shows us. When the mind works overtime, the body can get left behind, and we lose the ability to connect deeply, both with ourselves and with others. You may have experienced this yourself. You know you're hurt, but you can't cry. You know you're lonely, but your body won't let you feel it. You want love, but every time someone gets close, your entire nervous system locks up, and then you blame yourself for overthinking. But overthinking isn't the problem. It's just the result. The root is that your body didn't feel safe enough to let you feel. When you felt, you got hurt. When you softened, you were wounded. When you opened up, you were left behind. So, your brain learned to build walls, a wall made of thoughts, of analysis, of staying one step ahead of your feelings so nothing could ever catch you off guard again. But that wall, while it protects you, also traps you. It keeps you from touching pain, but also from feeling joy. It shields you from disappointment, but also from love. When your body stops being a home you can return to, you end up living in your head, like a small, cramped room with the lights on all night, always busy, never warm. So where's the way out? Not by forcing yourself to stop thinking. The more you try, the more you'll think. Not by suddenly throwing open the doors to your emotions. That would only scare your body more. The way out begins with gently making your body a safe place again. Very small, very slow, very patient. You can start by noticing the tiniest signals, how your breath changes when you're anxious, how your shoulders tense when you're afraid, how your stomach sinks when you're sad. You don't need to fix anything. Just notice. When awareness increases, connection begins to return. And when connection returns, your thoughts no longer have to do the job of your emotions. The mind can go back to its proper role, and the body can become the home it was always meant to be. Overthinking doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's a sign that there's a part of you that's been forgotten for too long, a part that's waiting for you to come back, to touch it, and to live with it again. And maybe, only then, will love finally have a real door to walk through. 3. Trauma is not only about major events. It can also be emotional abandonment and prolonged stress. Not everyone goes through violence, accidents, or a life-altering event that completely changes their fate. But many people, including you, have lived through a quieter form of trauma, silent, long-lasting, unnamed, yet deeply and broadly destructive. It shows up in childhood days when you were taught that your emotions were a burden. You cried and were scolded for being weak. You felt sad and were criticized for overreacting. You felt angry and were told to behave so adults would be less tired. Sometimes, you grew up in a family without violence or breakdown, but emotions were never welcomed. Only achievements, neatness, and reasonableness were valued. Then you grew up in a world that demands you be capable, resilient, and constantly productive. You carry financial pressure, shoulder family responsibilities, and live in tense relationships with no room to breathe. No one yells at you, no one hits you, but every day, your body lives under continuous tension like a string pulled close to snapping. That is trauma. Trauma of emotional abandonment, a kind of forced early adulthood. In situations like this, Carl Jung's words become especially true. The most damaging thing in the life of a child is the unlived life of the parents. End quote. Not only in the sense that parents miss their dreams, but also in the way parents or the people who raised you never had space to live their own emotions. Because of that, they could not teach you how to live with yours. And so, you grew up in a world where emotions were minimized, cut short, and asked to stay quiet, so life could be easier. Your body learned an unspoken lesson. My emotions are not welcome. And the body, loyal and far more intelligent than you think, listened. It slowly shut down its ability to feel, so you would not be hurt by people who could not receive you. It made you not feel deeply, so you would never hurt deeply. But the price was that you also lost access to full joy, real intimacy, and a love with depth. Many people think trauma is loud and dramatic, but most trauma is more like water dripping onto stone. Slow, quiet, yet capable of wearing down an entire lifetime. You were compared again and again, criticized until it became routine, required to be strong at all times. You learned to suppress emotion, to avoid trouble. Over time, what began as a survival strategy became identity. You no longer knew how to feel. Look at the story of philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Few people know that his childhood was marked by loss. His father died when he was 5 years old. His younger brother died not long after, and Nietzsche grew up in an all-female household where emotional restraint was the standard for survival. He wrote powerful, sharp ideas. Yet his inner life was filled with quiet wounds. He once admitted, "What is hardest to accept in life is a wasted feeling." He understood that trauma is not always loud. Often, it is an emotion buried alive, a sadness left behind, a part of the soul told to be silent. And this is happening to you. You are not numb. You have simply shut emotional doors to avoid further harm. But when the body is no longer a safe place to feel, you are forced to live through the mind instead. You analyze instead of feeling. You think instead of being present. You rationalize everything not because you are too smart, but because you were once forced to be strong to the point where there was no room left for softness. But there is good news. The body never forgets. It only waits for you to return. Like an old room covered in dust, once you open the door, clean it, and step inside, it becomes your shelter again. So where is the solution? Not in digging through the past to find someone to blame, not in quick healing through emotional explosions. The solution begins with allowing the smallest emotions to exist. A heavy breath, a mild sadness in the chest, a shrinking feeling when someone asks how you are. Just notice. When you stop fighting emotion, the body slowly opens its doors again. Trauma is not only the mark of big events. It is the moments when you are not allowed to be yourself. But the beautiful thing is this. Those same small moments are also where you can begin to return. because the body does not need you to be perfect. It only needs you to be present. And from there, you can enter love not with a guarded mind, but as a whole human being, able to feel, able to hurt, and able to live truthfully. 4. What once saved us later becomes what imprisons us. There are mechanisms that once saved us when emotions were too big, circumstances too harsh, and our hearts too fragile to take even one more scratch. As a child, leaving your body to live in your head was a smart way to survive pain. When adults didn't let you be sad, you learned to stay quiet. When home wasn't safe, you shrank into yourself. When no one listened, you stopped speaking. And back then, that strategy truly protected you. It was like a light armor that helped you walk through the dark nights of childhood. But the armor that once saved you, if worn too long, becomes a prison. Carl Jung once wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. When we avoid the pain that needs to be felt, we create another kind of pain, quieter, but more persistent. The mechanism that once saved you doesn't shut off just because you've grown up. It keeps running, like a locked door even after the storm has passed. Then, strange signs start to show up. A vague anxiety that lingers for days even when nothing's wrong. An emptiness inside, even though everything outside seems fine. Moments where you reach a goal, but joy doesn't follow, as if life is standing outside the door, waiting to be let in. The body speaks up too. Tense shoulders and neck, shallow breath, heavy stomach, restless sleep. Sometimes a wave of panic rushes in, and you don't understand what just happened. You think you're rational, strong, not emotional. But the truth is, your emotional switch was turned off a long time ago, and your mind has been running non-stop to keep everything under control. This isn't rare. It happened to Albert Camus, the French writer and philosopher who won the Nobel Prize and is considered one of the great thinkers of the 20th century. Camus grew up in the silence of a poor household, where emotions weren't expressed and sadness had no place to land. As an adult, he wrote with clarity, sharpness, and precision like a shining blade. But in his journals, Camus often admitted he felt distant from himself, unable to feel joy, always sensing an invisible gap between himself and the world. What once saved him, the freezing of emotion, became the wall that kept him from stepping into true intimacy. You're likely going through something similar in your own way. You're not cold. You've just learned to shut yourself down for too long. The old strategy once protected you from pain, but now it keeps you in a half-alive, half-defensive state. You're no longer hurt, but you're also not fully happy. You don't feel deeply disappointed, but it's also hard to open your heart. You don't cry anymore, but you don't fully feel joy or deep love either. So where is the way out? It's not in tearing the wall down all at once. It's not in forcing yourself to open up, to love boldly, or to suddenly become a deeply emotional version of yourself overnight. That would only scare your body. The way out starts with a gentle recognition that this mechanism once saved you. It wasn't wrong. It simply finished its job. Start by observing yourself when the shutting down shows up. When vague anxiety rises, recognize it as an old reflex, kicking in. When the emptiness appears despite everything being fine, understand that there's a part of you that's never been touched. When your body feels tense, see it as a reminder that you've been living too much in your head and too little in your body. Just notice. No need to fight it. No need to force anything. When you see this mechanism in the light of awareness, you've already stepped halfway out of it. 5. Modern culture. Productivity is worshipped. Emotions are dismissed. From an early age, we were taught seemingly harmless phrases that sank deep into our bodies. Push through it, even if you're tired. Resting is lazy. Don't be so sensitive. Success matters more than feelings. These lines didn't just shape how we learned and worked. They shaped how we exist in our own lives. We grew up in a culture where productivity is the measure of a person's worth. Meanwhile, emotions, the body, fatigue, and the quiet signals from within are pushed aside, even seen as obstacles. In that kind of environment, it's easy to believe three things. The body is a nuisance because it gets tired, hurts, and asks for rest. Emotions are weakness because they slow you down. And thoughts, logic, and achievements are the only proof that you're good enough. So you end up living in your head more than in your body. You run your life like a machine powered by logic, but inside, it's as empty as a room no one has lived in for a long time. Carl Jung once said, "You are not what you do, but what you are." But in modern culture, we're taught the opposite. You are what you produce. You are promotions, projects, KPI charts, and to-do lists checked off every day. You are accomplishments, and what happens inside you, the fear, the fragile joy, the heaviness in your chest, the need to lean on someone is all stamped as not important. The result is a society that lives from the neck up. We know how to think, analyze, and push forward, but not how to truly live. We're good at running, bad at feeling, good at pushing through, bad at pausing, good at enduring, bad at listening to ourselves. One clear example is the life of Simone Weil, French philosopher, activist, and theologian. Weil was an intellectual genius, praised for her sharpness and dedication, but she often lived disconnected from her body, to the point of ignoring her basic needs for food and rest. She believed that endurance and self-sacrifice were supreme, and the body was secondary. Weil worked non-stop, fought for justice, and reflected on human nature, but her body deteriorated day by day. She died at the age of 34 from exhaustion and refusal to eat as a form of sacrifice. Her life is a painful reminder of what happens when productivity and ideals are worshipped, while the body is dismissed, and the price paid when the soul no longer has shelter in its own body. You may not go to that extreme, but you're living smaller versions of that story every day. You force yourself to work through exhaustion out of fear of falling behind. You ignore the tightness in your chest, thinking, "I'm just being dramatic." You don't let yourself rest, not because you don't want to, but because you feel guilty when you stop. You were taught that rest is a luxury, that emotions are a hassle, that the body should be controlled, not listened to. And at some point, you realize that you're functioning well, but don't feel alive. You get everything done, but feel nothing. You're standing in the middle of life, but feel no connection to others or to yourself. It's not because you're weak. It's the natural result of living in a culture that disconnects emotions from human worth. The solution isn't to turn your back on the world or to tear down the entire system of productivity. The solution is to restore the place of the body and emotions, not as obstacles, but as guides. When you're tired, see it as the voice of biological wisdom. When you're sad, see it as a signal from the soul. When you don't feel joy even after success, see it as a reminder that you've drifted from your own heart. When you stop seeing emotions as a burden, they can finally become your compass. Modern culture wants you to live like a machine, but Jung reminds us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. There's no awakening if you keep running from the most human part of yourself, the part that feels tired, hurt, in love, in need. You're not wrong for wanting success, but you'll get lost if you lose your ability to feel along the way. And maybe the real journey of living and loving starts the moment you place your hand on your chest and ask, "What am I really feeling today?" That answer won't make you less productive. It'll just remind you that you're human, and humans are meant to live with both heart and mind. If what you just heard opened up a new awareness within you, gently tap the like button or share this video with someone you think might also need that moment of awakening. Every share is a small act with quiet ripple effects, just like the lessons Carl Jung left behind, silent, yet persistently touching the human psyche. And don't forget, the sixth sign is waiting for you in the next part. Walk forward with me slowly and fully. 6. Technology makes the state of retreating into your head worse. Maybe you've had a morning that didn't begin with your first breath of the day, but with the cold blue light of a screen. The moment you woke up, your hand reached for your phone before your body even realized it was alive. A notification, a message, a short video, a status update. Your brain was instantly activated, like someone had flipped a switch from far away. And from that moment on, your day passed without a single true pause. You take your phone into the bathroom, keep it next to you while you eat, open it whenever a trace of emptiness appears. You scroll to forget, but the more you scroll, the emptier you feel. You absorb all kinds of stimulation, images, sounds, faces, news. But somehow, you don't really feel here. The screen gives you a fake version of life. There's interaction, feedback, activity, but very little presence. Very little breath, very little body. Gradually, you fall into a state that feels familiar but is actually dangerous. Your mind is running at full speed, while your body goes numb. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your heart races. Your eyes strain. Your shoulders harden like stone. You consume information so quickly, your body doesn't have time to feel. The world is too loud. Your mind is overloaded. And your soul feels like it's sitting quietly in some far corner, waiting for you to return. Carl Jung once warned, "Man cannot stand a meaningless life." Human beings can't bear a life without meaning, but technology offers us something even more dangerous. A life that seems full of meaning, but is actually hollow. You're busy, you're connected, you're interacting, but you've lost touch with yourself. And when you're no longer in your body, you start to live in your head, where everything can be rationalized, but nothing truly touches the heart. A clear example of technology's impact on inner life can be seen in the story of philosopher Byung-Chul Han, originally from Korea and now living in Germany. In many of his works, he describes modern society as a burnout society, where people turn themselves into projects and lose the ability to be present. Han shared that, when he was younger, he went through a period overwhelmed by the noise of technology and information to the point where he no longer felt space or time through his body. Only when he stepped away from devices and lived slow days did he realize how long his body had been abandoned. Since then, he's become one of the loudest voices warning the world about how technology is eroding the human soul. You don't need to be a philosopher to realize the same thing is happening to you. You just need to notice the small moments. You reach for your phone whenever you feel empty. You scroll as a reflex to avoid discomfort. You check messages even when you know there's nothing new. You play a video just to fill the quiet. In those seemingly harmless seconds, you're leaving your body and stepping into the safety zone of the mind. A place where you can consume, watch, listen, but not have to feel. The body, abandoned for too long, starts to speak up. Vague anxiety, a sudden pounding heart even when you're sitting still. Shoulder and neck pain that seems like too much work, but is really a sign that your body has been cut off from breath. You feel tired, but don't know why. You feel empty, but don't know where to start. You feel lonely, even though you're surrounded by digital connections. The solution isn't to quit technology. That's not realistic. The problem isn't the phone, it's how you use it as a shelter from real emotions. Technology has become the most sophisticated numbing agent of the century. It doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't let you live either. So the way out is to return your body to its rightful place. Whenever you're about to pick up your phone just because you feel empty, pause for a second and notice your breath. Whenever you find yourself scrolling mindlessly, ask, what am I looking for here? Joy or escape? Whenever your head feels too loud, let your body speak. Walk for a few minutes. Open a window. Place your hand on your chest. Feel the warmth. When the body returns, the darkness in the mind begins to soften. Technology isn't the enemy, but if you let it fill every little gap in your day, it will slowly pull you away from yourself. You can't find real love if you're not present in your own life. And maybe the journey back begins by making space, quiet moments where you put the phone down, place a hand on your chest, and let your mind slow down just enough for your soul to catch up. 7. The question isn't how to think less, but what feeling is the body avoiding? Many people start their healing journey with a familiar question. How do I stop overthinking? How do I think less? But that question, in truth, always leads to a dead end. The more you try to stop thinking, the faster your mind runs. It's like telling a wave not to hit the shore, like telling a wound not to hurt, and then you feel frustrated with yourself, believing you're weak, broken, or incapable of controlling your mind. But the issue has never been about the number of thoughts. The real question is, if you stop thinking, what would you have to feel? That question alone can shift your entire perspective. Because thinking isn't just a brain activity. For many people, thinking is the curtain that hides emotions the body isn't ready to face. We think we're afraid of overthinking, but underneath that, what we're really afraid of is silence. Because silence pulls you down into the body where the things you've buried are still alive. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. People will do anything to avoid looking at their deepest parts." Overthinking is sometimes exactly that, anything. If you look directly at what your body might be trying to avoid, an old sadness you never fully cried out, a fear of abandonment, the feeling of not being loved properly, the shame from childhood, the moments you believed, "I'm not enough." None of these things disappear. They stay in the body in every tight muscle, every heartbeat, every strained fiber, and they wait for you to feel them. Some people are deeply afraid of quiet. Not because quiet is unpleasant, but because quiet lifts the curtain. When there's no more noise, no more work, no more notifications, no one left to please, you're forced to face yourself. And that is the moment many people fear the most. Not because there's nothing outside, but because there's too much inside. Philosopher Blaise Pascal, one of the great minds of the West, once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. All human problems begin with the inability to sit still in a room with oneself." Pascal saw something that modern psychology is only just beginning to name. When the mind fears silence, the body is surely holding something unprocessed. You see this in yourself. When your mind won't stop, it's not because your brain is too strong, it's because your body isn't ready to speak. When you overanalyze everything, it's not because you love control, it's because you fear awakening a buried emotion. When your mind spins on the past, the future, possibilities, and worst-case scenarios, it might just be your way of avoiding a very real feeling sitting just beneath the surface. The uncertainty of your worth, the fear of not being good enough, or an old wound you once swore you'd never let hurt you again. So what's the solution? Not to think less, but to ask a different question. Not, how do I stop thinking? But, if I stop for 1 minute, what would I have to feel? That question takes you out of the mind's comfort zone and into the body's truth. And only when the body is listened to can the thoughts begin to slow naturally, without force, without resistance, without a fight. Start with very small moments. When you reach for your phone just to avoid a pause, ask, what am I trying to avoid? When you're overanalyzing a message, ask yourself, if I didn't analyze, what would I really be feeling? When you see someone else express emotion and you feel nothing, see it as a sign that a part of you has gone offline to protect you. You don't need to force yourself to feel too much. Just open a small crack for the emotion to pass through. A brief sadness, a heavy breath, a tightness in your chest. As long as you're not running from it, the body knows the way to heal itself. Thought is not the enemy. It's just the guard standing in front of a door you haven't walked through yet. And when you're gentle enough to place your hand on the fear inside, thought will step aside on its own, making room for a deeper kind of presence. A kind of peace you can't reach by analyzing, but only by staying with yourself. 8. The first step. Ask, where in my body is this feeling? In those moments when you feel anxious, unsettled, or like something's wrong but you can't name it, your first instinct is often to analyze. Why am I like this? What happened? What did I do wrong? What did that person mean? Your mind immediately starts racing, creating scenarios, looking for reasons, trying to control things through thinking. But the more you analyze, the worse you feel. The harder you try to understand, the tighter your body becomes. The more you reason, the farther your heart drifts from itself. In moments like that, what you need isn't another thought. but a completely different kind of question. Where in my body is this feeling? Pause for 10 seconds. Don't explain. Don't look for reasons. Don't try to understand right away. Just ask, where is it? In your chest? Your throat? Your stomach? Your shoulders? The base of your neck? Then ask, what does it feel like? Is it a tightness? A heat? A heaviness? A vibration? A dull ache? An emptiness? And finally, how strong is it? On a scale from 1 to 10, how intense is it? It may sound simple, but this small act is the doorway out of the maze of thinking and back to the truth that's happening in your body. When you ask your body, you force your mind to stop storytelling and start observing. That shift from analyzing to being present is the first step out of overthinking. As Jung once said, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. What you avoid doesn't go away, it just grows bigger. And often, what you're fighting isn't thought, it's a feeling waiting to be acknowledged. We see this clearly in the work of psychoanalyst Wilhelm Reich, one of the first to study the deep link between body and emotion. Reich noticed that many patients couldn't access their emotions because they had frozen certain areas of their bodies: tight shoulders, frozen chests, clenched bellies, locked jaws. He realized only when a person could feel where the emotion lived in their body could they be free from the mind's control. And when that area was acknowledged and truly felt, the mental story naturally softened. You've likely experienced this in your own way. When you're anxious, your chest tightens. When you're afraid, your belly drops. When you're sad, your throat closes. When you're angry, your jaw clenches. The body always speaks before the mind can understand. But you've become so used to chasing thoughts that you've forgotten how to hear the body's first voice. And here's the strange thing. Just naming the feeling changes it. When you say, my chest is tight, the anxiety becomes less vague. When you say, my stomach is tense, the fear stops being faceless. When you rate the intensity from 1 to 10, your brain shifts from panic mode to observation mode. You're no longer swept away by the stream of thoughts. You're standing on the shore, watching the water flow. And in that quiet awareness, the mind, which has been running to escape feeling, is finally allowed to rest. The solution isn't to analyze your emotions. It's not to judge whether they're right or wrong. It's simply to allow them to have a shape in your body. When a feeling has a location, it's no longer something to fear. When the body is named, the unconscious begins to thaw. And when you're present enough to feel, your thoughts naturally slow down, not by force, but by coming home. Maybe that's why Jung always emphasized that the path to healing begins with bringing the unconscious into the light, but that light isn't intellect. That light is awareness through the body. Because the body doesn't lie. The body doesn't tell stories. The body just tells the truth. And if you can ask your body, every time you're lost in thought, where is this feeling? You'll notice something strange start to happen. The anxiety no longer takes over. The confusion no longer drags on, and the heart begins to crack open just enough for presence to enter. Through that small crack, life returns, and love in its most natural form quietly follows. If any part of this video made you pause and look deeply into yourself, feel free to share a thought in the comments. Have you experienced a moment like that recently? Your story isn't just a personal experience. It can be a mirror that helps someone else recognize the unconscious part they've been avoiding. I'm always grateful for the chance to hear from you. 9. Grounding. Returning to the present through the senses. There are days when you feel like you're slipping out of your own life. Everything moves too fast, too loud, too many layers of information pulling you out of your body. You're living inside thoughts, inside worries, inside stories that never stop in your head. And sometimes, you just wish someone would take your hand and pull you back. Hey, right here, in this moment. But no one does. And you don't know how to do it yourself. Grounding, returning to the present through the senses, is how you take that hand. A very small, very everyday, very gentle way to tell your body, I'm here, I'm safe, I don't need to run anymore. Number 5. Number 5. Number 5. Start with the simplest thing. Press your feet to the floor. Feel the real support. Feel the weight of your body. Many people don't know that the feet are the first place to signal to the nervous system that you are in the present, not stuck in thought. You can also hold an object with a clear texture, a cold cup, a metal key, a small stone, and feel its weight, its coolness, its roughness. Or rinse your hands with cool water and let the temperature bring you back into your body. Or take a deep breath and slowly follow the air as it moves through your nose and down into your chest. Or look around and name 5 things you see, as a way of reopening the door to the real world. These actions might seem minor, but their effect reaches deep into the nervous system, because grounding is how you turn off survival mode and switch on presence mode. It's like sending your body a tiny but very clear message. There's no threat here. You don't need to run. You can breathe. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without sensation. There is no awakening without the experience of the body." The mind is where we think, but the senses are where we live. And grounding is the bridge between the two, bringing you from the abstract world in your head back to the real world of skin and breath. A beautiful example of grounding's power comes from the writer Virginia Woolf. Woolf was known for her brilliant mind and deep inner world, but also for frequent mental breakdowns. In her diaries, she wrote that when her mind became too loud, the one thing that kept her from being swept away was pausing to feel a real object in my hand. A leaf, a stone, a cup of tea. She described it as a thin thread tying me to the earth. Grounding, in Woolf's way, wasn't a technique. It was an act of keeping her soul tethered to her body so she wouldn't drown in endless thought. You don't need to be a writer to understand that. You only need to notice yourself. When you're tense, you usually don't feel your feet. When you're anxious, your breathing is shallow and fast, like your body doesn't dare take a full breath. When you're sad, the world blurs, and you move through the day like it's a dream. Grounding is how you wake yourself, not with a loud alarm, but with a soft touch to your senses. And that softness is exactly what heals. Because grounding doesn't force you to face your pain. It doesn't demand that you rip your heart wide open. It just creates a base. It helps you stop running. It prepares you for the moment when you feel safe enough to touch deeper emotions. Because without a foundation of presence, all healing efforts stay theoretical. And without breath, without feet on the ground, the heart can't open. Let me say this clearly. Grounding is not a trick. It's a way of living. A reminder that sensation is not a luxury. It is the root of life. And when you truly return to your senses, when you feel the floor beneath your feet, the mist on your skin, the air in your chest, you're not just pulling yourself into the present, you're pulling your soul back into your body. And when the soul returns, love finally has a door to walk through. 10. When the body returns, life returns. There's a strange moment that happens on the journey back to yourself. The body starts to return before the mind even realizes it. You find yourself sitting in a conversation and notice that you're truly present. Not playing the role of the good listener, not trying to appear calm, but present with the full aliveness moving inside you. You don't have to perform, adjust, or analyze every expression. You just show up. And that presence feels like the relief of taking off a suit of armor you've worn for too many years. When the body returns, even the smallest things feel different. You enjoy food more, not because the meal is special, but because your mouth has remembered how to taste. You sleep more deeply, not because life is less stressful, but because your nervous system no longer stands guard through the night. You make decisions more quickly and clearly, because your intuition, the body's language, is no longer blocked and has found its voice again. You feel love more honestly too. You're not trying to impress, not performing, not shutting down, not overly guarded. You allow yourself to soften without fear. And it's that softness that lets love reach you. Life doesn't return in loud or dramatic ways. It arrives in tiny joys. The sound of birds in the morning, sunlight slipping through the curtain, the peace you feel when you lie down, a real conversation, a deep breath you never used to notice. You don't need a big event to change your life. When the body comes home, your entire inner world begins to shift. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." It's 7-1. But to look inside, you can't rely on thinking alone. You have to use your body, where the heart speaks, where the soul sends signals, where life has a tangible shape. The mind is a brilliant tool, but it's not a good home. The body is the home you've been away from for too long. Look at the life of Henry David Thoreau, the American writer and thinker who left industrial society to live for 2 years at Walden Pond. Thoreau wasn't searching for knowledge. He was searching for life. And he found it not in books, but in breath, footsteps, birdsong, water, and wind. He wrote that it was his body, not his mind, that taught him how to return to the present. As he walked through the woods, he felt subtle shifts inside, his heart slowing, his breath deepening, his mind quieting. "I walk to return the legs of the soul," he wrote. And only when his body returned did he truly wake up from the illusions of the life society had placed on him. Your story doesn't have to be as dramatic as Thoreau's. Sometimes, the body returns in small moments when your heart softens as someone hugs you tightly, when you smile without having to think whether you should smile, when you stand in the sun and your eyes sting slightly not from sadness, but because your body hasn't fully lived in a long time. So what's the solution? Not slow living as a trendy slogan. Not forcing yourself to meditate for an hour a day. The solution begins by letting your body take the lead. When you feel tense, pause and breathe. When you feel joy, let yourself fully feel it instead of holding back. When you're sad, let the sadness pass through instead of analyzing it. When something feels off, trust the signal in your body before you try to explain it with your thoughts. And then, little by little, you'll notice you're no longer living by old habits. You're no longer running on survival reflexes. You're no longer trying to be perfect just to be loved. You're no longer measuring your worth by productivity or control. You begin to live by your own breath, by your own truth, by presence slow, deep, soft, but strong. When the body returns, life returns. And when life returns, love, the kind of love that doesn't come from need or fear, but from wholeness, finally finds its way in. There's a truth everyone eventually has to accept, though many resist it for years, sometimes decades, hoping the world might make an exception for them. No one is responsible for making us feel safe. Not our parents, not our partners, not even the people we love most in this life. That safety, the kind that lets us breathe deeply and rest without fear, can only ever be built from the inside out. It's a hard truth because it contradicts every instinct we were conditioned to rely on the need for reassurance, for someone to promise they'll never leave, never hurt us, never let us fall apart. But growing up begins the moment we stop demanding the world handle us gently. The moment we realize that other people are also carrying their own pain, and they're not always capable of giving us the softness we crave. Carl Jung once said that a person meets themselves in the darkness they see in others, and that meeting is rarely pleasant. It's uncomfortable, sometimes unbearable. To realize that the parts of someone else that upset us the most often mirror the parts of ourselves we've refused to face. The deepest wounds we carry don't always come from sharp, dramatic moments. More often, they come from the quiet, the spaces that were left empty when we needed presence, the silence when we needed comfort, the look that wasn't given, the words that were never spoken. And so, the real work, the soul work, isn't about confronting anyone or proving our pain to the people who caused it, or even waiting for them to acknowledge what they've done. Healing doesn't demand conflict. It demands honesty with yourself. You don't need to win against anyone in this life. Not the person who hurt you, not the one who left, not the voices in your head that say you should have known better. What you need, what your heart truly needs, is space. Space to soften, space to breathe, space to say, that happened and I survived, and I no longer need to carry it as proof of who I am. You need to release your expectations, those quiet contracts you made in your mind about how others should show up for you. You need to start trusting your own intuition, that soft inner voice that speaks without panic. that never rushes, that always knows. And sometimes, you need to step back, not to punish or to disappear, but to give your heart the distance it needs to remember what peace feels like. If you feel yourself changing, becoming quieter, more sensitive, less reactive, more boundaried, it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're giving up or growing cold. It simply means you're shedding an old layer, a skin that used to protect you when you needed armor, but now feels too tight to carry who you're becoming. It means you're moving closer to the version of yourself that isn't surviving anymore, but choosing. A version that is more real, more radiant, and far more at peace, with not needing to prove anything to anyone. Thank you for walking this path, for choosing, day by day, to stay close to yourself, even when it's hard. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll move forward, others you'll pause, and sometimes you'll circle back to the same lesson, in a deeper way. That's okay. That's part of it. If you want to keep returning to yourself, one steady breath at a time, follow the channel so you don't lose sight of the road you're opening. This voice will always be here, not rushing ahead, not pulling you behind, but walking beside you, slowly, calmly, quietly, safe enough for you to come home again and again.